Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Soul School. Class is in session. Jeff, how are you?
You know what? I'm doing wonderful tonight. How about yourself?
I'm doing well, all
Mhm.
things considered. It's been a
Yeah.
very long day, a very trying day in some
Mm,
ways, and yet um, here I am.
mm.
And, I think ultimately stronger for it, in the grand scheme of things, just stronger for trying days because you get through them, you move on to the next day, you handle the next challenge. But what I wanted to talk about tonight was a lesson that I relearned
Mm.
this past weekend when I had the privilege and the pleasure and the honor of being included in a wedding that meant a great deal to me. My friends, Chad Dye and Heather Hansen, became Chad Dye and Heather Dye. And I was there for the nuptials. It was beautiful. It was so special. And last Friday night at this time, they were getting hitched.
Mm.
And after being together for 9.5 years
Mm.
and knowing everything about each other, just still decided it was a good idea.
Yeah.
And it gives you hope. At least it gives me hope
Mhm.
um, that there is more love than not in the world, and that when people dare to acknowledge it and embrace it, it can be life altering. Um, so, the thing that was so wonderful, aside from the obvious, that I was there for this blessed union of souls, I also got to see a bunch of my friends that I have not seen in many months because I've been virtually house and yard bound here
Mhm.
on 2 acres of grounds that require constant upkeep. Um, I was just, I guess you would say, in a rut,
Mm.
just, doing the same thing every day, every day. And of course, whenever I leave, arrangements need to be made
Mhm.
so that my sister has some help with my mom. And so once that was done and I could relax and know that it would be fine in my absence, I got to really enjoy my trip. And my dear, dear friend and my agent, Greta, came with me. And we had a blast and we saw a whole bunch of people that we haven't seen in many months, some of them, up to a year. And so I brought a few pictures along if Bill is there and wants to put them up. I sent them in. This is Chad and Chad Dye and now Heather Dye. It was a wedding to die for, so said their invitation. Aren't they lovely? Aren't they
Yeah.
beautiful?
Yeah,
Yeah.
congratulations, guys.
Yes, congratulations from all of us on Soul School, from
Mhm.
all of us. I know I speak for everyone. Okay, Bill. Isn't that great? Isn't that a great shot, John
Oh,
Tenney
it's that
officiated?
tiny officiating. Oh, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah,
Yeah.
Tenney officiated, and
Mhm.
then he did something remarkable that they had all agreed on. There were several, ministers or, people pastors, people had, that had the same ability to marry them that he did, and he asked all of us to stand, and I guess there were maybe 5 or 6 of us in the crowd, and, he let us participate in the vows, and
Mm.
that I now pronounce you husband and wife, and it was so great. It
That's
was
amazing.
so great, and it taught me again how important it is to sometimes just get away.
Mm.
Just, even if it's quote unquote work, that wasn't work. That was a joy. That was being legitimately joyful for someone else's joy.
Mm.
Um, and I found that to be incredibly therapeutic, absolutely wonderful to see Tim Shaw and my friend Frank and Jennifer Lindsay Palmer was there, who I adore.
Mm,
So many of my friends, of course, I had Lynn and Jeff with me. My friend Cass drove in from Ann Arbor, Michigan to come spend a couple of hours. Um, I really needed that. I needed to get out of me and celebrate someone else's journey
mhm.
rather than always being wound up in my own and wound up in my own and pacing through the house and wandering the yards with a rake. I needed to find my find my happiness again and
Yeah.
step away from, what is really mundane, the Sisyphean tasks of life. Oh, it's time to do the dishes, load the dishwasher, run the dishwasher, do a
Mhm.
load of laundry, vacuum clean, I mean, just like all the household stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, the nurse is going to be here in 45 minutes. Okay, let's get, everything all ready and get mom moved out. And that's my day today, today, today. And to break that cycle, to break that pattern for just, I think it was like 72 hours
Mhm.
total, um, maybe not even that much, was very healing for me.
Yeah.
And I would highly suggest that everybody within earshot of this take my best advice and plan even a day trip. But I think that it was like the ultimate cosmic field trip.
Mm.
I stayed on Earth. We did a calling on Saturday night and got some, wonderful, wonderful shots, lots of activity over holy Toledo. And it meant a lot to me. Okay, Bill, you want to we'll just buzz through the other pictures that I sent you. Okay, see, that's tribe right there. See Greta, she's right behind me. I look washed out like I'm ready to pass out on the pavement, but it's just blame the lighting. Poor Greta, we couldn't seem to squish her in. And Jeff and oh my God, Michelle and Mark and John, everybody, and then Lenny and Jen. And it was so much fun, Jeff. You can buzz through them, Bill. I think there's only, oh, Tenny. Oh,
Hmm.
don't even get me going. Okay. And there's Greta being jubilant and Lenny and Jeff and Michelle. And we were all together. And this is Sharon and Rocky. And a really nice shot of the background, too. You could really see what was going on. It was great. It was great. And Jen, I just love her so much. And Michelle, they're my girls. This is my tribe. Thank you, Bill. Thanks for putting those out there. Um, these are, I mean, everybody's on Buttercup Brigade and everybody has each other's numbers and everybody, and nobody ever pesters anybody, but we're all within just this far, just, a quick outreach, just so quick if we were to need each other. And I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful to have, I can't think of a more significant word than that. I mean, it just fills my heart and it fills my life. Chad and Heather took me last year, along with Lynn and Jeff and Cass. We went to a wonderful mansion, the Whitney, in Detroit, Michigan. Well, I think there is only one Detroit. I think so. Um, and I had the most excellent time with them. It was so wonderful to share that experience with them And what was really great when Chad caught, Cass's hair on fire,
Hmm.
that sent a shot of adrenaline through pretty much everyone. It was windy, these things happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, he
I
was
only know her from the one show we did with her, and, I
yeah,
I can't imagine that was anything other than,
yeah,
well, entertaining, scary, probably momentarily, but
a
also entertaining.
little scary,
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, I think that was the one where she walked through and she, practically had no clothing,
that's the one, yep.
I hate to kill a mosquito, but I would much rather him not be in here, and I can't catch him right now to put him out and save him, so okay. So anyway, after I had this remarkable experience that was completely exhausting, and I came home and I rested for a couple of days. I was thinking about happiness and the alterations, when we alter our perspective or our venue or, like a sudden change in the weather, it wakes you up, it gets you suddenly more alert.
Yeah.
And so the other morning I was going through and I sent this to you. Um, this article, very well written article about Carl Jung, who's one of our favorites. I mean, I've learned so much from him, started studying him in my freshman year of college. Should have studied him earlier than that. Wasn't offered in any of my classes.
Yeah, still probably isn't, yeah.
Probably still isn't. Okay, so he's got these building blocks that he talks um, about the road to happiness. He doesn't think that happiness is a general state of being, that we have fleeting moments of happiness and joy, and then we go back to our mundane lives. Um, but he believes that number one, good physical and mental health.
Mm.
Well, I'm out of the game, in the first inning. Yeah, requires soundness of mind and body. Well, I'm okay in the mind, but my body's failing me fast.
Hey,
Um,
we're all in the same boat, right?
yeah, and I'll let everybody know rather than reading this, it's quite lengthy. That I'll post it after the show on my Facebook page, and they can read it. It really does offer I think, a great deal of good advice. Um, and so number two, good personal and intimate relations, such as those of marriage, family, and friendships. Well, I've got the family and the friendships thing down to a freaking science. The rest is kind of still up in the air. Um, for going on 2 decades now. Three, seeing beauty in art and in nature. That's the one.
Mm.
That's my happy place. And I do. I mean, just, oh my God, there's never a time that I'm outside that I don't see something wondrous,
Mm.
remarkable, magical, beautiful, ever. And, we've got a really pretty piece of property here with lots of trees, lots of wildlife. And so it's easy to interact, especially when you're the one that brings the nice fresh loaf of bread to the back door. And they're like, oh, we love her. Oh, God. All right. Number four, a reasonable standard of living and satisfactory work. I love what I do. I know that you love what you do. Um, in terms of your lecturing and I don't know if you love your day job like you love doing this show,
Right.
but, all things being completely unequal most of the time, if there's one thing that you do that you love, really love, consider yourself very lucky.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
I do. I
Mhm.
consider myself blessed beyond measure.
mm,
in that capacity. Um, and then it goes on to talk about um, that money is really not the goal. You know, it's great, it's nice, it's freedom if you have it, but it's not the goal. If you make it the goal, it'll never be enough.
mhm,
It'll never be enough. Number five, a philosophical or religious outlook that fosters resilience.
mhm.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Gets me through every day. Every day. Um, so that was it. Arthur C. Brooks is the author of this, and I will post it after the show. And it's wonderfully written, very well done. But you know, it caused me. I stopped and I read the whole thing, um, and then I read it again because it caused me to reflect on where I am in my life. And I know anybody who's got a few minutes here and there to reflect on their lives does the same thing that I do. What am I doing wrong? Why am I not further along yet? You know, I mean, you
Mm,
start asking yourself all of these questions.
yeah.
And because I am sucked into a situation that will not change for the foreseeable future, if there is such a thing,
Mm,
um, to get that break, to get that opportunity to go to fly into Detroit, drive down to Toledo, enjoy the view of the lake, watch the stars and the sky come alive that night was, you know, it was wonderful.
mm,
And it was uplifting and illuminating and enlightening for me personally in terms of feeling hopeful about the future
mm.
because we celebrated a wedding. You know, it was, you know, I don't know what that, I know what that means to you. I don't know what it means, marriage means, you know, to anybody else that's watching or listening. But in its purest form, it truly is a blessed union of souls.
Mhm,
And it when it clicks and you really get each other, really understand each other, I can't really imagine a better thing. And that coming from someone who's never been married, never had kids.
mm,
So just can't imagine a better thing. And in some, you know, I'm Libra. I'm the sign of the scales and the sign of marriage and love and intimacy and relationships and blah blah blah. All of that Venus, you know, all of that. And it's like I can't be, you know, I can't be because the only thing I've ever wanted was a beautiful, loving, lifelong relationship that I could nurture and I never got it. I just never did, and I don't think it was a matter of being too picky. I think it was that I just wasn't supposed to have it,
mm,
that anybody that came along prior to this moment in my life, on some level, taught me what I didn't want in a relationship,
mm,
and consequently, they ended.
mm,
Um, some longer than others, but inevitably they ended, and I've been alone now with family, you know, family and a lot of friends, but alone in terms of a relationship, um, for I think 15 years.
mm,
And the longer it goes, the more I come to understand that this is how it was supposed to be. That if I had been in a relationship all these years, I wouldn't have written all those books. I wouldn't have done what I did. I would have been busy being focused on the relationship. I wouldn't have done anything for myself.
Mm.
Well, this past weekend, I went to the frozen tundra in the whipping wind and the icy air to attend and participate in a wedding. And I can't think of a more beautiful, beautiful thing to do.
Mm.
So, anyway, that's it. Now you talk, and I'll drink my Coke. I'm losing my voice, and I have a
Mm.
whole other show to do.
Yeah.
And so we're going to talk on that show too. Rupert's going to be on a World Awakening tonight. He just got back from 2 weeks in the UK, and he
Mm.
went everywhere. So we're going to do um, a homeward bound thing with him about going home, and this about getting a change of venue, a change of perspective, a change of, how does it feel for you when you have to run off on a weekend and you have a lecture to do and you have meet and greet and you have all of this stuff that you do, um, and then you come home?
Mm.
Does it feel the same every time, basically, or do you
Yeah,
have
it's a
different?
unique thing, and the yeah. Yeah, I mean, one thing I'll say is that I've been light on travel post COVID. Prior to COVID, my travel schedule was packed. It was every weekend. I was somewhere, and I would get right off from work on Friday, and I would drive to DTW and get on a plane and fly to Oregon or fly to wherever for the weekend, and you know, get back Sunday night or early Monday morning. And if I got back Monday morning, I would usually drive straight to my day job. And but I loved it, and I loved it. Now post COVID, I've kind of made some alterations to my lifestyle. I've been sticking closer to the homestead, if you will,
Mhm.
just for various reasons, and also because a lot of the travel stuff just kind of shut itself down on me. And for a season, I took that as something that I needed to embrace because I'd been so incredibly busy prior to COVID. Um, and I was always gone, I was always on the run. And while I thoroughly enjoyed it, it also can be a bit much at times. Not the experience. The experience is glorious, but just the kind of wear and tear on everything else. Then you got familiar responsibilities and what have you. Um, However, I will tell you that I do miss it, and I'm coming to a point in my life right now where I'm ready to kind of maybe pull the string of that bow back and launch again, just because it's been a year and a half ish since I've really traveled heavily. Now I have traveled here and there, but not as much. And there is something in me that's now itching to get out there again and to begin to do it again. But yeah, no, I mean, the thing for me that it would always do is the way that I always pictured is it helped me to render the map of reality a little bit larger than it comes to be when you're just stuck within four walls times six or seven or however large your house is, and you're just kind of trapped in that box, if you will, or you're trapped in the routine of waking up, going to work, coming home, and there's nothing wrong with routine, but routines have to be broken now and again in order for you to be able to actually appreciate the routine. I think the whole system works together. Um, like I do appreciate the routine of my life. I do appreciate the routine, the roteness of it all. But I appreciate it because I've also experienced the total upsetting of it. You know what I mean? I've
Yes.
experienced not having routine, and I've experienced not being home very often, and being gone to the point where, like especially back in my days as a pastor, it was travel on the weekends, and then it was working in the offices at the church all day long, and then at different events all through the night, sometimes getting home at midnight. you know it was just it was really almost impossible to establish a routine. And now that I'm at a different point in my life, I am able to, and I appreciate routine because I've experienced no routine. Um, but then that routine has to be broken time and again because you do get into cycles, right? You get stuck in a wheel, you get tied to the wheel, if you will, and you're just being carried along like a spoke within it. And Nietzsche said that the goal of maturity is to become a wheel that is propelled from its own center. One that feels a sort of autonomy and a sense of control over their life rather than one who's just tied to the spokes. And travel and getting out now and again does that for you. And like I said, it helps you kind of render the map of reality a little larger. And I always think of it in terms of like a video game, like in the early days of video games. I don't really play too much anymore. I don't really have time. But when you would go to a new part of the map, it would be heavily pixelated. And as you would move through it, you would watch it rendering in real time and becoming more and more clear. And then when you would return to that same spot later on, it would be rendered because you'd already gone through it and the system rendered it. And so there is kind of like, I think reality works that way sometimes. We get such tunnel vision, and there's these other parts of the map that we're missing because our lives consist of waking up, pouring ourselves a cup of coffee, taking a shower, throwing some clothes on, going out the door. And speaking of breaking the routine, we just had a picture of a wedding pop up, Speaking of, now that I know Tenny performs sacerdotal services, I might just need to renew my vows just so I can say John Tenney officiated. So yeah, and you too, actually, because you're a credential holder within an organization as well. So yeah, I mean, just to be able to claim that. Anyways, but like, so sometimes we get such tunnel vision, and our worlds become this sort of like first person game. We go down these tunnels every day, and then we come back on these tunnels, and it's just this very rote thing, and we get very trapped in a routine. And if you're like me, my brain works so that I can just get so focused on doing the tasks at hand that like a month can go by and I'll stop, and it'll almost feel like I've just been doing the same thing for an entire month. It'll just feel like one long thing like that, because that's just kind of how my brain works. It's like falling through a wormhole. And so I've got to break that up sometimes. And, sometimes that happens. You can do that by, just taking one day off. People don't realize, people who work regular 9 to 5 jobs, you don't realize sometimes how tired you are. You don't realize sometimes how much you just need a 3-day work weekend versus a 2-day weekend or whatever, and sometimes it is really just like that extra time to remind you that your time does belong to you, to remind you that you are not.
Yeah. And how valuable it is.
Exactly. And it helps you. And again, it renders reality a little bit more large because you're used to, let's just say your typical 40-hour week. You're used to 5 of your days every week within the most valuable hours, right? The most valuable time slots where you can get the most done and you can be the most efficient. Those belong to someone else. That's the way we get used to thinking, right? So even just actually using your PTO and vacation time and not feeling guilty and bad about it the way that organizations often make you do.
Make you feel, yeah.
Yes, just doing it, because you should feel as bad about taking a day off as you should feel about collecting your paycheck, because that's part of your salary package, or that's part of your package as an employee. So you should never feel bad or guilty about that. Even if it's a Monday and it's busy, you're entitled to it sometimes and you're worth it. And so you should just do it. And when you do it, it reminds you of the fact that you have more control over your life than you think you do when you break the routine. And then other times, like my mornings are very, I take my son to school, it's the same thing every day, but I have to even just take a turn down a different road sometimes. I just have to take a different route home. And in taking that route home, it's like, oh, new parts of the map that I forgot existed render in front of me, and the world just seems a little larger. And we might think that kind of stuff is not a big deal, but I'm telling you, that kind of stuff is a big deal, because the world that you perceive is the world that you perceive. Everything that you see that's outside of you is actually happening inside of you, right? It's a reflection coming back to you, and you're interpreting what you see. And so if you get stuck in a routine of feeling like the world is just this, it's these small cramped quarters, it's this trap you can't get out of. Well, life, even if your life would be the envy of someone with another life, that life feels like it sucks to you. And so you have to now and again just break the mold, break the routine, whether it's getting away for a weekend, taking a day off, taking a different way home from work now and again. I mean, really, sometimes that's what you can do, and I would even say, even the environment you live in, right? Even your own home, right? I remember when my mom as a child would change the furniture around, and we would walk in the house as we were used to it being, and it would be completely flipped on us, and like cats who it takes you like a week to walk around remapping the environment. It took us a couple days to kind of remap. Oh, the couch is here now. The chairs are here now. But it was like a twisting of the kaleidoscope, and it refreshed everything. Like it really was almost like rebooting the computer, and everything kind of changed and felt a little more fresh. And we take things like that for granted. We think the small things are small things, but small things are actually the big things. As above, so below. As with the macro, so with the micro. Reality is fractal. Reality is self similar. The big things out here that we think can only be changed through big means,
Right.
they reflect the smaller fractals that all of reality is built of. So, who's to say a big thing can only be changed through big efforts? Sometimes big things can be changed by changing the small things that the larger things reflect. And so, even a change in the physical environment that you live in is huge, whether it's changing the furniture around or cleaning stuff up. I mean, you don't know, I don't mean you, but I mean, I think we don't realize
Oh,
sometimes.
no.
Yeah.
We clean up every time I'm about to do the show on
Yeah.
Friday nights.
Oh,
Move the pillows, move the blankets, move the dogs, oh God, yeah.
oh, believe me, I do too. I have a room for live streaming that looks nice. Once you get outside of these borders, it gets a little more chaotic. Um, I've established order here. We're fighting. We're still fighting for it out there.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm serious. Even if it's a matter of just having one room in your house where when you go in it, it is a little bit more well ordered. Some people's brains work that way more than others. Mine does. If I'm in a room that's chaotic because of how my brain works, I may as well be in, the Warrens museum and having a bunch of little demonic trinkets chittering in my ear. I mean, that's kind of how it feels to me. If I'm in a room where things are really disordered, I'm just kind of like looking at it all, wanting to adjust this and fix that. And that's just part of how I'm wired. So I know how I have to have things so that I can really focus in. So you need to know the kind of environments in which you can thrive. And you need to have at least one space in your home where it can be like that. So every time you go to it, it's almost the equivalent of a little vacation. Like you really do. Or just change things up. Like seriously, your environment reflects your mind reflects your environment reflects your mind. And
Mhm.
like I think sometimes even when we begin to just accumulate and accumulate and accumulate and we're not moving stuff out,
Mhm.
that can even create blockages in the mind where we feel like we're always just amassing and never giving, and therefore we're never receiving. And sometimes we feel like spiritual change has to happen on a spiritual level, but I don't think that's the case. I think you can make the easy physical change, and in making the physical change, you can set things off in here that will position you to receive change in these spiritual manners. And I mean, seriously, whenever I feel stuck, I will just clean up. I will clean up. I will clean a room. I will kind of like establish some order in this area, and then I feel this kind of I don't want to say not in any kind of weird way, but I feel this power over reality. Like,
Mhm.
okay, this I'm not as much under the control of this as I felt like I was because look at the order I just established,
Mhm.
right? And it's like my favorite line from the first season of True Detective when they're looking at the stars at the end of the show and they say, it looks like darkness has a lot more territory. And the one character says, "You're wrong about that. Once upon a time, there was only dark. It seems like to me the light is winning. The fact that there's any light at all proves that light is winning." And when you establish any kind of little order or peace, even in your home, it's like once there was only disorder. The fact that there's any proves that it's growing and it can continue to grow. So like I know all of this might seem really simple, but it's huge, right? And
It's
and sometimes you might not be able to get on a plane. Like I've been at times in my life where I couldn't, you know what I mean? Where I needed to badly, but I couldn't. But I could make my house a place that I wanted to be rather than a place where I didn't want to be, right? And something's interesting, and I was thinking about this today. A lot of times when addicts die, they overdose. One of the reasons that it happens is because of the environment. One of the ways that this happens is individuals, let's say they're I don't know, let's just say shooting up heroin or something. And so when they do it, they go into an environment that reflects the action in some ways. Let's say they're at like your stereotypical drug house, let's just say, and let's just say that's the environment it's done in. Let's just say it's a certain environment you do it in every time. The body learns the cues that you're going into this environment and it starts to gear itself up for the chemical onslaught that it's about to experience. And so the body begins to brace itself for what's coming. Okay. But when people change environments and do the same thing, they often die because the body is not getting the cues that it's getting when they go to other environments. And It's tragic. It's tragic either way. But one of the things we can learn from that is that, let's just even say your actual home that you're in, right? Your body preps itself prior to you entering that to experience the things that you're going to experience when you get inside of it. And so if you're used to going home every day and you hate it, you just hate the state of things, you hate the way it looks, you hate the way it smells, you hate the way it sounds, you hate everything about it. Well, change something. I mean, seriously, like, I'm not kidding you. You don't know how magical it can be to switch out the scent of your Glade plug-in.
Yeah.
So you walk into a different aesthetic vibe, and move the furniture around. I mean, it sounds so silly, but eventually then your body, if you were depressed when your home was like this, every time you're driving home from work, your body is gearing up for an onslaught of depression when you walk in, and your environment is going to remind you, it's going to reinforce to you that this is still who you are and where you are. But if you change it and you alter it and you're like, no, this house reflects a state of mind that's healthy. This house, as it is right now, reflects an individual who's on their way up and not down, blah, 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 whatever you want to fill in the blank with. You can link that emotion to the new aesthetic vibe that you've established, and I throw that out there only to say, even those who maybe aren't in a place where they can travel, there are other things you can do that can have the same effect until those doors open for you. And they're things that we take for granted because we're taught big things are big things and small things are small things, but small
Mhm.
things are big things.
Yes.
Big things are just simply the fractal outgrowth of the small things. And if you start there, the other stuff kind of establishes itself in your life as well. So, anyways, I feel like you have got something to say.
One of the things that I like to do to escape is a very simple thing. It's the Smithsonian Channel has a
Mm.
series over America where it's a visitation of the country
Yeah.
done with drones and historical records and a trip through like Gettysburg or a trip through Arches National Park or Yellowstone or whatever over America.
Hmm.
And it is just stunning.
Yeah.
And, I mean, absolutely as well done a series as it could possibly be. And every now and then, if I can't find The Princess Bride or, one of my other favorite films in the guide, nothing that's around right now, I'll go and I'll watch that series on demand. And after about 2 or 3 episodes, I feel like I've been on a trip around the country.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's amazing. I mean, I just feel so uplifted and so inspired by the beauty of
Hmm.
this place
Yes.
and the history of this place
Yeah.
on Earth.
Yeah.
Uh,
And we have to stretch the borders of reality
yeah.
as we get used to it, because we do get used to it. And no matter what, I've been all over the world. You've been all over the world. I've seen all kinds of things. You know, um, I look through my Facebook memories of years gone by, and I mean, just the other day, I was like, oh, I was in Hawaii. I was here. I was here. I was here. And then at that moment, I'm sitting there, at my desk working my day job, and it's nice, and I don't dislike it. Got a nice little space, and I do satisfying work. But I mean, I would have rather been in Hawaii, to be sure. And enough time passes between that event and the one you find yourself in, and things kind of narrow on you, and you start to feel cramped again. And but sometimes you can't just pick up and go. But there are incredibly simple things like what you just said that you can do, like in the early morning hours, sometimes during the winter, when I want to be sitting on a lake somewhere, listening to the rain hitting the water. There's just these sort of ambient videos on YouTube that just loop the same scene over and over again.
Mhm.
And there's just one specific one. I always visualize myself sitting on this porch with like a little fire going and rain, because that's kind of like my happy place. If I could choose a place, that's what it would look like. And I
Mhm.
just sit there, and I'll just get real quiet in bed and just kind of like take it in, and I'll be transported there mentally and maybe
Mhm.
even spiritually in some way when I'm trapped in the winter season where I can't actually be somewhere like that. But those are just little practices we can do to expand to cause our map of reality to render out a little bit larger when we're in times and seasons of life where maybe physically we can't do it. There are things you can do, but for God's sakes, by all means, if you can physically get there, because there really is just no replacement for breathing different air and being in new environments, especially around, people. Because, dude, I've got a problem, and my problem is I'm an extreme introvert. I really am, and by that I don't mean I'm shy. I'm not really shy. And if I get behind if I get behind a pulpit or a podium and you put a mic in my hand, or you ask me to speak on a live stream like this, I can go unbroken extemporaneously for hours. I'm not shy, but I do kind of like my solitude a little bit. And I forget sometimes how alive I come in the presence of other people, because we really do believe the lie of individuality, that we are individuals, but we aren't individuals. We are interdividual. And, you can see that by, if there are things you love doing, there's things we all love doing just by ourselves, but there are certain things that you only love doing with other people, and to go and do the same thing without that person, it's not the same thing, which just goes to tell you it isn't really you that enjoys that thing. It's you as an interdividual with this other person who enjoys this thing, and we forget that. And I always have this shocking epiphanic moment each and every time that I do expose myself to that crazy thing that is other people, which is that I'm like, damn, that wasn't so bad, And I feel something come alive in me that was dormant prior to, because I really I could have been a monk. In fact, in another reality, I probably in every other reality but this one, I am cloistered away in a cell somewhere, a monk in some religion somewhere, just because I can really do that and I could thrive on it. Most people were, like during COVID, were clawing at the walls.
Not me.
I woke up
like, woohoo.
Every morning. I was like, I hate why, but I love that I'm here, and but when I break out of that mold and I do interface with other people, there is a part of me that comes alive that is otherwise dormant, that I forget goes dormant when I'm not with other people. And again, those are other things we can do to just kind of like wake ourselves up and cause reality to render a little bit larger. I bring this up all the time, but it's just one of my favorite young stories, and that really is saying a lot. But in Memories, Dreams, Reflections, he talks about a trip to Africa he takes. And I think they're in, I can't remember where they're at the moment, but he looks out on this scene, something from The Lion King, animals, and just this beautiful scene. And he looks around and realizes his are the only human set of eyes on this scene. And so it kind of dawns on him that in terms of consciousness, because I think consciousness is probably at different levels. He was like, in terms of consciousness, mine is the only human consciousness presently taking this scene in, which otherwise would have been unrendered by consciousness of the level that we have it. And it's only being integrated into the larger collective unconscious because it's streaming into it through my eyes. Right. Every other creature involved is taking it in on one level, but on the level he's taking it in, he's like, it's only entering into the larger collective through my eyes and through my mind right now. And then he kind of had this moment of epiphany where he's like, that is the cosmic meaning of consciousness. And if you want to read his story about that, Google the words cosmic meaning of consciousness, Jung, where he realized that he's not only rendering his reality larger by doing this, but in some ways, because of how he believed the collective, he was doing it for all of humanity in some way.
Humanity.
Yep.
I know I often told my mother that she was a cosmic librarian, that, her purpose in life, aside from everything else she accomplished, was to read, assimilate, archive thousands of books. And, we're all voracious readers, but my mother could polish off, 3 novels a week. I mean, plus do everything else that she did. And, I always thought, okay, she's reading the creativity of humanity in the form of literature. She's reading it into the universe. Someone else created it. She is absorbing it and becoming the conduit
Mm.
that, you know,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
it's kinda like when you become conscious of something in your own self, and it's, like, brought before your eyes. It's always there under the surface, but then when it comes to the surface and you become aware of it, like,
Mhm.
"Why do I always act this way?" Or, "Why do I feel this way when I'm in this environment?" When you identify it, it's always functioning. It's there, it's present whether you know it or not. But once you bring it up, again, this is another Jungian concept. We're on a lot of Jung tonight, but where he says, unless you make the unconscious conscious, it'll rule your life and you'll call it fate. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's in there. It's all a part of you. But until you bring it up to the conscious level where you look at it, it'll always be functioning. It's like
Yes.
hitting Control Alt Delete on your computer
Mhm.
and the task manager pops up and you see everything running in the background and you can become conscious of what's running on your machine. And consciousness, I think, works that way. Meister Eckhart famously said, "The eye through which I see God is the same eye through which God sees
Which
me,
God
and
sees me.
vice versa." That if consciousness is, and this is an if, but I kind of tend to see it this way, that God is sort of it's the one, and I know you pretty much see it's very similarly, that
Mhm.
it's all the mind of God, if you will. Or if somebody doesn't like that term, that's totally fine. I'm comfortable with it, but some might
Mhm.
not be. But we're all that consciousness, like a light beaming through a stained glass window. And we're all different colored shafts of light, depending on who we are. But if you broke the window or opened it so we don't have to vandalize anything, um, you'd see that it was all just the same thing streaming through different facets. And
Right.
uh, so, like, there are ways in which God incarnates God's self that beam then back into God, and the greater mind like absorbs it, right? And so yeah, like even just taking consciousness beamed this book into existence, but then a conscious mind within that consciousness, a fragment of the consciousness, picks it up and perceives it, and then sort of beams it back in a greater way, and beams it back in through perceiving it, but then also being able to like teach it or elucidate,
Mhm.
what's going on to other people. And like to think that we're participants in rendering the game that is reality more clearly and larger. To me, it's like what a responsibility, and a wonderful responsibility that is. And
Yeah.
that's what Young walked away from that experience in Africa feeling. He was like, he remarked about how a Native American friend of his came from a tribe who thought that it was their, I'm forgetting the exact example, but if you look up the same story I'm talking about, you'll find it, where he said they believed it was kind of their responsibility to basically cause the sun's rising each and every day. And he was like, we look at that now as a primitive superstition. He's like, but who's to say in some cosmic way they weren't? By observing it and seeing that as their responsibility, in some way they were. In some way they were
Yes. And
performing
we're
that.
therefore integrated with nature.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, 5 minutes. Yeah, right, Bill.
Holy moly.
Oh, that really is 5 minutes. Oh god.
Hmm.
I thought he was jerking my chain for a minute. It's a yeah, okay. Well, you know, like bright sunlight passing through the facets of a diamond in a wedding ring.
Hmm.
I celebrate tonight. I celebrate you. I celebrate Chad and Heather's lovely heavenly union. I celebrate seeing all my friends, lots of hugs and kisses, some pretty inappropriate commentary, as I recall. Yeah, oh my God, I feel so bad for the guy at the desk at the Hampton Inn. He got such an earful of, oh my God. And, we weren't even drinking. We were just happy.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a good thing you weren't, probably, huh?
Oh, I know it. Yeah, it's been wonderful and it has been uplifting for me. And I, strongly suggest that everyone out there make some time for yourself, even if what you're going to be doing doesn't have really anything to do with you personally. Going to a wedding is about the couple,
Mm.
and yet, oh my God, how absolutely stunningly beautiful and exciting and uh, uproarious and just fun. Go have fun with your friends. Go make some memories.
Mm,
Do something magical. Break up your routine. Live tomorrow like, I know it's cliche to say as if it's your last day,
mm,
but I don't think there's anything wrong with that notion either.
no.
What would you like to do today that maybe you've not done in a while or ever that will enrich your life?
Mm,
So that said,
mm.
any closing thoughts? I mean, we got like 2 minutes left if we're lucky, but any closing thoughts?
I'll just say a hearty yes and amen to all that was said, Andrea. I agree 100%. Yep. Live your life, be happy, find something to do this weekend that you thoroughly enjoy. Find someone to serve whom you love and experience the joy that comes from that. And just realize that the small things aren't as small as you think they are. And enjoy.
Absolutely. And with that said, we wish you all the best. Happy, happy Saturday and Sunday. Make the most of it, and class dismissed.